Welcome to the Entrepreneur Exchange on the Mesh Podcast Network, a monthly conversation about startups, small business, with ideas, tools, and advice to operate your business more effectively. On today's show, you're an entrepreneur. You've got a product idea. How do you launch it? Can you make money with it? Our guest today is John Ujvari with the North Carolina Small Business and Technology Development Center. He's going to give us some pointers on successfully launching your product. We'll also have our Small Business of the Month feature, where we'll recommend some interesting businesses that you should be checking out. Greetings, my name is Jeff Neuville. I'm your co-host. I'm director of the Manufacturing Solutions Center in Conover, North Carolina. I'm joined by my co-host, Gary Muller, who is Executive Dean of Economic Development and Corporate Education at Catawba Valley Community College in Hickory, North Carolina. Gary, how's it going today?
Jeff, it's going great, and great job on the title. We've been working on that for a while, but we got it under control. Very excited. We came back from our state conference in Skills USA, and our students did a great job again, so very, very excited about that. Things are going well at the college.
Well, and Skills USA is a national program where students have the opportunity to do presentations on everything from entrepreneurship to welding to cosmetology to what?
Everything, anything. As I say, as you just said, from accounting to welding and everything in between. Of course, entrepreneurship's been a great competition for us, and we've done well with that as well as many other ones. So, but our students continue to do well, and it's exciting.
And you'll get to go to a national competition in
Atlanta.
In Atlanta this year.
Yes, we had 14 state champions, so we will be taking probably over 20 students to Atlanta in the end of June.
Okay. Well, I know some really nice clubs in Atlanta that you guys might want to hit.
I don't think we're able to do that with our Skills USA students.
All right. Well, you're lost.
But you can tell me about what they are later.
Okay. All right. Well, Gary, let's welcome our guest. John Ujvari, who's Director of Commercialization with the North Carolina Small Business and Technology Development Center. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Glad to be here.
We're glad you're with us.
Well, we appreciate you joining us today. Before we get started with product commercialization, tell us a little bit about the Small Business and Technology Development Center and what your role there is with technology commercialization.
Absolutely. So the Small Business and Technology Development Center, for short, is the SBTDC. We're actually part of a nationwide network of small business development centers. So there are about 60 small business development centers all across the country. Some states have multiple. We are funded in part by the Small Business Administration and funded in part as a match through the University of North Carolina system. So state dollars and federal dollars coming in together as a match. Our organization is approximately 70 individuals. We're located across the state. We have offices co-located on each of the UNC system campuses. My physical office is based at UNC Chapel Hill. We are an economic development advisory service. So very different than what you would consider as a consultant. We're not consultants, we're advisors. And we advise early stage small businesses, medium-sized businesses, as they work through all of the challenges that they're focused on or should be focused on as they grow. The core of what our services revolve around is what we consider general business counseling. And the general business counselors are business type agnostic, industry agnostic. They work with Main Street businesses, manufacturers, service providers, et cetera. Working with them on financials, working with them on marketing, business plan development, et cetera. In addition to our general business counseling services, we also have 3 special resource areas. The first is our international business development team. They work primarily with later stage companies that they've been in business, they've got product on the market, and now they're looking to export products, looking to go globally. Second special program is our government procurement team. They work with, again, companies that are a little bit later stage, product on the market, revenue generating, and are looking to utilize the government as a customer. Going through that process, especially the first time, is, as you imagine, quite a challenge. So they work with companies to identify government procurement opportunities and then work with them through that process of going on to be successful contractors. And then finally, our third special group is my team, our Technology Commercialization program. And we tend to work with earlier stage companies that are innovation driven, companies that are developing intellectual property. And when companies come into our program, they're generally at the stage of research and development, researching and developing that innovative product that they hope to bring to market. And oftentimes our services revolve around two major things. Number one is identification and successful funding acquisition, and moving on from there, helping them to really rally around the commercialization aspect. And of course, we're going to talk in much more detail about the commercialization topic today. So I've been with the SBTDC since 2001. I've been primarily working with innovation-driven companies throughout my entire career here. I've had a lot of experience working with all sorts of different companies in a wide range of industries. So a lot of kind of wisdom I've gained over the years.
Well, and you also do have something in common with my friend Gary, in that you're both, I believe, have MBA degrees from Wake Forest University.
Oh, great!
God bless you.
Graduated from Wake Forest in 2001, and
wow.
Right after that, joined the SBTDC.
I went to undergraduate and graduate school at Wake Forest, so I bleed black and gold.
Yeah, much earlier dates than you, though.
Yes, I was going to say I'm not going to, somewhere in the 1930s.
Yeah. So I'm sure technology was much different back then.
We didn't have technology.
Yeah. So John, when you talk about technology commercialization and IP, I mean, do you work with people that have physical products, your widgets, or is it primarily software or other technology, or a little bit of all the above?
Yeah, it's absolutely all of the above. On one hand, technology is a good word, but on the other hand, innovation type companies is the better descriptor of the type of company that we work with. And innovation from my standpoint means companies that are developing a new novel product or service that's going to fulfill an unmet need, okay, that has a significant market potential. And as you can imagine, the industries that falls into is extremely broad, from software, hardware, materials, biotech, medical, pharma, all across the board. So we are indeed technology area agnostic when it comes to companies that we work with.
And now you said that there are two primary aspects that you focus on: funding and commercialization, and we can talk a little bit about both of those. Out of curiosity, do you look at it, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you focus first on commercialization and I'll say / viability, or do you worry about funding, or how do you approach these things?
That's an excellent question. You can't successfully attract funders without having at least a baseline understanding of the ability to commercialize what you hope to develop. So there does need to be some foundational understanding of what is the market need, and really what is the ultimate viability of what we're developing. That I would say is step number one to understand. If that passes muster, you can then move on to looking at funding opportunities, because every funding opportunity, no matter if it's going to be government grant or contract funding, equity funding, debt funding, they're all going to want to see that there is some commercial viability of that.
Okay.
And, I'll also add that, quite frankly, that most early stage research and development companies kind of skip that step. They go directly into looking at funding mechanisms without having at least a data-driven understanding of what the market and product possibilities might be. So that's where we can come into play and help them kind of step back a little bit and really understand where to start the process.
So something that I know you and I have spoken about is developing a commercialization plan. So talk a little bit about what a commercialization plan is, and why does someone launching a new product or a new service need it?
Excellent. So we look at a commercialization plan as kind of a pseudo business plan, a business plan that has a very specific focus on a particular product or service that's being launched. And in essence, the commercialization plan is a roadmap that will be followed post research and development. Okay. And this is a plan that is going to help both the entrepreneur and potential funders understand the business opportunities, understand the funding requirements in the commercialization phase, and what's going to be the plan of action for launch. Okay? And oftentimes there are a lot of assumptions that need to be made and incorporated into a commercialization plan. Backing those assumptions up with data to support those assumptions is really key. But at the end of the day, they're still assumptions. At the end of the day, it's somewhat still a fictitious document that's being drafted. But it's the best you can do, and it really helps the entrepreneur to focus their efforts on what are we going to do if this product or service comes to fruition. So really, I'm a huge advocate of starting with the end in mind, and help to promote that to the companies that we work with. And of course, that end goal is the successful launch and revenue generation of the product that they've launched. And starting that commercialization planning process and understanding all of the components is really key. So assumptions, but backing them up with as many assumptions as possible.
And I know that when Gary and I talk to people about business plans, one of the things that we try to focus on is, who is your audience? Are you writing this for you? Is it your roadmap? Or are you writing this to potential funders, lenders, whomever? Is there a specific audience for the commercialization plan, or might it be tweaked depending on who that audience is?
Absolutely. I think it's a twofold answer. First and foremost, any business plan or any commercialization plan, the first audience should be the entrepreneur. The process of developing a plan of action and gathering data to support your assumptions really helps the entrepreneur to understand what is the opportunity. And if there is not an apparent opportunity, that should really help make them think about pivoting or just moving in a completely different direction.
I think that's really important. We're working with some young entrepreneurs right now at the end of the semester and going through and doing their business plan. We talk about it all the time. It's okay if you go through all the assumptions and all the analysis work and find out that, hey, this may not be a viable opportunity. It's better to find it out during the development of the business plan than going out there and learning the hard way that it wasn't the right way to go.
Yes.
And that's where you guys come in, as well as Jeff and myself, is looking at it and saying, hey, this may not be for you, because even though it may be painful, it won't be less painful if they go forward with something that's not good.
A huge investment of time, funding, et cetera, could go to waste without this prior planning. So, of course, the secondary audience to a commercialization plan is funders. So a lot of the companies that we work with, again, are in R&D mode, and a lot of them are poised to go after SBIR funding, Small Business Innovation Research, which is a major federal funding mechanism for innovation-based small businesses. Those agencies that provide funding require a commercialization plan to be submitted with their research and development proposal in the phase 2 of the SBIR process. And without a clear, concise commercialization roadmap, an SBIR proposal could have, the absolute best product in mind. It could have great research and development potential, but without demonstrating to the reviewers of these SBIR proposals that there's going to be a plan of action to get this product to market, they won't fund it. So same goes with equity funders. They're going to be looking at a pitch presentation, which in essence is containing elements of your commercialization plan. They're going to be wanting to see that there is a strong revenue generation profit motive. So I think to answer your question, it's a document, a plan that's beneficial to both the entrepreneur and the funders.
And you talked about that. You just mentioned elements that you think funders might be looking for, or I guess potentially the government if you're going through the SBIR process. Are there certain key elements that should be included in that commercialization plan? You mentioned assumptions, and I sort of assume at some point we're getting to the financial piece of this where someone's going to have to make some projections of what sort of revenue we could be generating. So what sort of elements do you tell people they need to be including in that commercialization plan?
Yeah, there are about a half dozen elements that are very important in a commercialization plan. And the first is describing what is the unmet need in the marketplace. What are the pain points that this potential product or service is going to fulfill in the marketplace, and really having an understanding of what are the user's needs. Next is competitive landscape, really understanding what products, what companies is our innovation going to be up against. So it really ties in with the unmet need in that understanding what the competitors' value propositions are, and what are the weaknesses in their solutions to the unmet need, really helps to guide what are the pinpoint benefits that we need to bring in our new innovation. So unmet need, pain point, and then competitive analysis and landscape analysis are real key. Say the third is looking at the intellectual property landscape. Are there intellectual property protections in place for similar products or services that exist right now? Intellectual property is going to be very, very key to any funder. They want to see that what is being developed is protectable, and that it can't simply be copied and prepared and sold by others. So having a clear understanding of what patents, trademarks, et cetera, are in place right now, and how our technology or innovation can fit into that landscape is very key. Promotion of the product. What is going to be our plan of action to get this product in front of potential customers, potential buyers? What are we going to be building a promotional team in-house, or are we going to be outsourcing that, et cetera? Production. If you're in the say you're developing a device or a widget, whatever it might be, if it's a physical product, of course, you've got production needs. Who is going to be doing that? Are you going to be outsourcing it? Are you going to be doing it in-house? Are you going to be subcontracting? What is the plan of action there? And then I think most importantly is the financial aspect. Over the next 3 to 5 years, what do we project our expenses to be? What do we expect our revenue potential to be? And I think most importantly is if you're running at a loss, how are we going to fill that gap? What funding mechanisms are going to come in next, right? Is it going to be additional grant funding, contract funding? Is it going to be equity? Is it going to be debt? Looking at what are our funding needs going forward, and how are we going to fill in the gaps until we become profitable. And team I think is for many reasons, not just for the commercialization plan process, but team is really going to make or break the ability of an innovation to be funded and to be successful. Of course, the best case scenario is a team that has been there and done that before, right? Serial entrepreneurs. But everybody needs to start at the beginning at some point in their career. So a little bit more difficult for an unseasoned entrepreneur or unseasoned innovator to demonstrate their success. Prior successes. So in those cases, kind of wrapping advisors, wrapping a board of directors around you, if you are early in the process, can go a long way. So a lot of different components in the commercialization plan, but they all revolve around market need, who's going to make this happen, and what is the funding that we're going to need to make it happen.
Well, yeah, taking a step back a little bit and talking about market need, and something that we've discussed on our podcast before, the whole customer discovery process of really trying to validate the business idea. I know that's an area that you put some focus on as you're working with people. How does customer discovery fit into the plan, and what sort of mistakes do you see people make as they go through that process?
So customer discovery is something that should start very, very early in the process, even prior to development or research. All businesses need to think of their customer as really being the king. Right. It's kind of a, just a saying that we toss around, customer is king, but in fact, that really is true. And the customer is king when conducting customer discovery. So customer discovery is really all about learning what your potential customers' needs and pain points are, how they're currently solving the problem at hand. What's their willingness to use a better solution if one existed? And what's their willingness or ability to pay for added benefits if those were to be available to them? Okay. So starting that customer discovery process early is very important, because it is a time-consuming process. It's a time-consuming process because you need to identify who those potential customers are, who those users are, who those decision makers are, and you need to define key questions that you need to ask them You need to reach out. You need to expect that most of them are not going to respond to your initial request. And you need to be perseverant, right? You need to really continue down that path and try to get as much data as you possibly can. And in the process of asking those questions of customers, the key is not to ask leading questions. The key is to ask probing questions, prompting questions, and put your listening ears on and gather as much data from them as possible. So don't ask leading questions, ask global questions and learn from them. And from one interview to the next, maintaining continuity between those questions so that when it comes time to analyze the results, you're going to be analyzing similar results from similar questions that you have. And as you start this customer discovery process, you may find that the questions or the probing questions that you're asking aren't really leading to the data that's most valuable to your commercialization plan. So you may have to change up. You may have to pivot a little bit and really assess how can I ask these questions better to get to the data that I need. A lot of products and services have a variety of different pools of people that should be asked questions of. So think about an educational tool, right? The user or beneficiary might be the child, right? The decision maker about using this tool might be an educator, a teacher, and the actual buyer, the check writer for this tool, might be a school system, right? So all of these three different entities are going to have different kind of pain points, different value propositions that they need to make a purchasing decision. So kind of chunking these different buyers, users, and beneficiaries out and probing different questions to each of these different groups can be a strategy as well.
This doesn't sound like I can knock it out in an hour, John.
No, this is clearly a 6-month process.
Wow. Okay.
It really is.
And when you say interviews, I mean, do you suggest personal face-to-face interviews, online, or depends?
Yeah, it really depends. Clearly face-to-face is going to be difficult, especially for, product offerings that have a nationwide or even perhaps a global audience. But start small. Start in your geographic region so that perhaps you can have face-to-face meetings. Learn from those initial meetings, and then move on to virtual meetings, phone calls, etc. If you have a massive audience, say of 1,000 potential customers that you may want to reach out to, certainly using a survey mechanism could be beneficial to you. But I think having that one-on-one interaction, whether it be phone, in person, virtual, is going to lead to a lot more information sharing from that interviewee.
Yeah, you gave the example of an educational tool. Often I call Gary an affectionate way an educational tool. So I can relate to that.
Well, thank you.
And let me jump in, and the final thing I'll add is that this is not a sales call. These are not sales that you're trying to achieve, because you don't have a finished product yet, or you shouldn't have a finished product at the time you're starting this process. This is a data gathering call to help you understand what the needs of the customer are so that as you're going back to the drawing board, back to the lab, back to the facility where you're developing this product, you can create that product that's going to fulfill exactly what the needs of the customer are.
Now, early on, you mentioned the importance of protecting intellectual property, which I think my mind quickly goes to securing a patent and dollar signs flash in my head. So, talk to us a little bit about how you advise your clients on intellectual property and how you take them through that process there.
So a great publication that the SBTDC offers is our intellectual property guide, and that's available on the sbtdc.org website under our publications tab.
How much is that? How much does that cost?
That is absolutely free.
Oh, that's even better. Okay, good.
There are actually a good number of publications, kind of guidance documents available on that same link that are available for download as well. But as it relates to intellectual property, this is something that most definitely needs to be considered because at the end of the day, protecting what you have developed is going to be kind of the intrinsic value of what you're offering, right? So there are multiple mechanisms of protection. There's patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, and the mechanism that is selected is really depends on many factors. We always suggest that reaching out to an intellectual property focused attorney is a good idea. Okay. Intellectual property attorneys are not all equal. There are some firms here in North Carolina that are more entrepreneurially focused, and those are the ones that we tend to suggest that early stage companies reach out to. And the reason for that is because those entrepreneurially focused intellectual property attorneys or firms really understand what the needs and the position that early stage companies are in. They don't have a lot of funding to put toward protection. They don't have a lot of funding to have strategic discussions. So we do recommend several attorney firms in this space across the state. You have to remember that whatever the mechanism of protection that you employ is simply giving you or your business the right to pursue infringement. Okay, it's not absolutely protecting you from nobody else stepping into your world and copying that. All it does is it provides you the opportunity to go after them, and that can be very costly, right? So it's costly, but in many cases, very, very important. It's especially important when it comes to fundraising. Fundraisers are going to want to see that you've employed a strategy of some sort to protect what you're developing. Because if somebody does come in and copies your idea and really runs with it, well, there goes the entire value of this product offering that you've made. As you can imagine, intellectual property protections vary vastly in terms of time and cost, depending on what is being developed. Trademarks, clearly an easier mechanism, less costly. Going into patents, a lot of companies have what they consider platform technologies. And there need to be multiple patents to protect the entire platform, and that can be a very costly initiative. So we're not attorneys here, but we know enough to suggest that a company probably does need to have some protection depending on what they're working on, and we make referrals consistently to many attorneys.
I just want to go into a little bit of a different topic. You talked about funding, and you mentioned the small business innovation research grants. We always run into folks who are saying, "Where's the grant? Where's the free money?" But SBIRs are fairly specific, and I guess there's a limited audience there. I mean, tell us a little bit about the SBIR program and when it's appropriate for someone to be looking in that direction.
Sure. Well, we look at funding as being what we call a funding food chain. And different funding mechanisms can be a fit depending on the stage of the company and also the stage of the technology. At the, we'll call it the pre-venture stage, companies that aren't even, quite frankly, a legal business entity yet. Of course, they have very limited funding opportunities. Oftentimes, it's friends and family and fools, and it's bootstrapping, putting your own money in. And from my perspective, using that funding to conduct that customer discovery work and maybe doing some very early stage preliminary development work on your product can come into play. Once that company is in business, they're an LLC, a corporation at that point. They've got some preliminary data. They've done some customer discovery work. We consider that an early stage business at that point. That's where SBIR and STTR funding can come into play. And SBIR and STTR is a $4+ billion funding mechanism that's available from 11 federal agencies. And those federal agencies have what they call solicitations that they publish sometimes multiple times a year. And these solicitations or requests for proposals are needs that the agencies have an interest in funding. These needs can be either internal needs to the government. So, for example, Department of Defense has a lot of internal field-based needs that they have. So they publish solicitations that are fitting of developing solutions to problems that they have out in the field. Other agencies like the National Institutes of Health and National Science Foundation, they don't necessarily have internal needs that they're interested in funding, but they have mission-driven interests that they fund. So no matter if it's a internal or an external need that's being developed, the agencies have an interest in it. And the first stage that a company generally enters into is called what's known as a phase one SBIR or an STTR. In phase one, provides between $200,000, $300,000 in 6 to 12 months of time to carry out a feasibility study or a proof of concept study. And that really helps to nail down, is this product something that actually works? Does it provide a solution? If phase one results pan out, you're eligible to move on to a phase two. And the phase two requires a robust research plan in addition to the commercialization plan. And that phase can provide $750,000, sometimes upwards of $2 to $3 million, and 2 years of time to, best case scenario, get that technology or an innovation to a point where it's commercial ready. Now, that's best case scenario. Certainly for very capital intensive projects like pharmaceuticals or medical devices, SBIR is only going to fund a portion of the work, even by the end of phase two. And that's where follow-on equity funding often comes into play, is post phase two. So once a technology is de-risked enough, or its technical readiness level is higher, that opens the door to these a broader array of potential funders. So angel funding, equity funding, and perhaps even debt or partnership funding from larger corporations can come into play. So a lot of different funding mechanisms. They all have their place in the development phase and business and revenue generation phase of the business. And that's where we can come into play and work with a company to say, okay, you're at phase X. This is probably the funding mechanism that you should look at right now. But also, let's be thinking 2 to 3 years down the road to say, what do we need to achieve to be able to open the doors for follow-on funding mechanisms? So it's a funding food chain.
Okay. Well, you've done a really good job of sort of laying out the process from the commercialization plan and viability and customer discovery and funding and intellectual property. We really appreciate you being with us today. You got you okay if we go through our lightning round with you?
Let's go for it.
All right. Well, these are quick questions, quick answers. Don't overthink it. Today's lightning round is sponsored by Globo Gym. Do you need to lose some weight? Get in shape, Gary?
Yes.
Well, go to someone else's gym. Globo Gym is not the place for you, but you should check it out on the internet. But anyway, all right, John, we've got some quick questions for you. We're going to start with, what is your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve is when people don't respond in a timely fashion.
Fair. What toppings or topping do you put on your pizza?
Mushrooms, black olives, all day.
Where do you fall out on pineapple?
Love it.
On your pizza?
No, on ice cream.
Okay, fair.
On ice cream.
Good answer.
That's good.
Beatles or Rolling Stones or Taylor Swift?
Neither. I'm actually a Rush guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rush.
So Beatles, little too early for me. I'm a young guy.
Okay.
That sets us apart in our schooling.
Well,
I like the
to
Beatles.
think they transcend time, but
That's
all right. Daylight savings time or standard time?
Daylight savings all day. I have no idea why they keep going back and forth. Hate it.
Do you have a favorite go-to adult beverage, and what is it?
Rolling Rock beer.
From Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Yes, and to my surprise, it is getting very, very difficult to find in any grocery stores.
All right. Well, go keep up the good
It's
fight.
from Latrobe. That's
So
Arnold
when
Palmer.
I find it, I load up.
Okay. Last question for you. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
To change past behaviors.
Yours or other people's?
Mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could
Yes,
go back
both.
and fix a few mistakes, that would have made my life a lot more pleasurable.
Okay. Well, I think that's a different podcast. But anyway, we appreciate you being here, John. If people want to find you or the SBTDC, where should they be looking?
SBTDC.org is our website, and my email address is sbir@sbtdc.org. Easy one. Easier than my last name.
All right. SBIR@sbtdc.org. So we really appreciate you joining us today. At the end, Gary and I like to share some small businesses that we've run into. John, anything that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Sure. It's the work that we do is takes a long time to see terrific business results. And one company who I will not name the name of was a spin out of Duke University in, going back to 2004. And they are continuing today to develop artificial blood vessels, right? Which is very important in the market. Currently, blood vessels or arteries still need to be harvested from the body. So oftentimes from the lower leg and then placed into the heart region to replace blocked arteries. So this company again started back in 2004 as a spin out of the university, and almost 20 years later, they've raised lots and lots of both SBIR equity funding. They've done an IPO. They're on the market now. But they're still in R&D mode, still doing trials. But I'm very hopeful. So this is one example of how a perseverant team really made things happen from a funding and an R&D standpoint, and they're really close to commercialization. So it's terrific to see these long-term projects continuing to run, and hopefully going to be making huge impacts in the lives of people.
They still associated with Duke, and that as a basketball fan, I'm only used to people saying at Duke for 1 year.
That's true. I'm sure there's still some intellectual property that's some ownership at Duke, but yeah, great team and great story there.
Okay, that sounds good. Well,
Not many one and dones in this project.
Yeah. One and done is. I don't think that John doesn't have a lot of one and dones. It sounds like they're going to be working for a while to get up and running. But
that's right.
Gary, what's your small business this month?
Well, you mentioned Global Gym. So, of course, my small business ties into what businesses I always like to talk about on our show, and that's whether it's dog business or food business. And this month's in line with the dog business. Power Pup Mobile Gym out of Sherrills Ford, North Carolina, actually, in the Lake Norman area. The Power Pup Gym is the first and only mobile dog gym serving the Lake Norman area, and they bring specially designed treadmills. This is really cool. You got to look it up on the internet, the video, and the climate-controlled vans. And I saw the van. That's what gave me the idea. They'll bring it to your home, the business. The staff works with different motivational tools to get the dogs to work out like they never have done it before, along with private appointments. You can also do pup-up events and that are scheduled around the area, and you can take your dog to the gym in the van and try it out. By the way, the Slate Mill is a non-motorized treadmill designed especially for dogs. I don't know about cats. I don't think I'd see that. I think this is a dog tool.
Okay.
But really interesting. Of course, there are great reasons for the owner to do it. Mobility issues, time constraints, safety concerns, different things like that. You wouldn't have to buy your own treadmill. You can just rent it out. And of course, it's good for dogs because they have a controlled environment. They don't have to worry about hot pavement. They don't have to worry about muddy areas. And I thought it was pretty cool. And I loved the pop-up runs where they have, I guess, groups of dogs go together and they play together and then they train together.
Gangs of dogs.
Gangs of dogs.
All right. Well, that's very cool.
I saw mostly medium to small. I didn't see big Great Danes and St. Bernards doing this.
Well, that sounds pretty unique. That's pretty cool. All right. I wanted to give a shout out to a company called R Riveter. I was actually at a program this week that had a military bent, military business type stuff, and the keynote speaker was a woman named Cameron Cruz, who founded this business with her partner Lisa Bradley in 2011. They're both military spouses who, I guess, faced the frustration of as they moved often, it was difficult for them to find employment, and military families on average move every 2.9 years. So it's just not a lot of continuity there. So they bought a commercial sewing machine, they started making bags, and they started enlisting other military spouses to make parts of their pieces of the bags, with the handles and latches that were all assembled and sold. They're selling them on the internet under R Riveter. In 2016, they went on Shark Tank and secured $100,000 in the partnership of Mark Cuban. So just a really cool business. They focus on providing flexible mobile opportunities for military spouses. There are premium bags, but they're made from folks that are giving to our country, and you should check it out at rriveter.com to learn more about R Riveter, the R Riveter company. So a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you have a suggestion for our Entrepreneur Exchange Small Business of the Month, you can email them to us at eexchange@themesh.tv. We appreciate your suggestions. We want to thank John Ujvari for joining us. John, thank you so much. We appreciate you being on the Entrepreneur Exchange.
It was a pleasure.
And as John mentioned, you could go to SBTDC.org to learn more about the Small Business and Technology Development Center here in North Carolina. And you can find John and his commercialization group out there as well. We want to thank the Mesh Podcast Network for their support. Go to themesh.tv to see all of the cool podcasts going on at the Mesh. And we will look forward to talking with you again next month.
Take care.
Take care, guys.